Okay, so have you ever had one of those cuts or wounds that just seems like it will not heal? Or maybe you've been to the doctor and heard that phrase antibiotic resistance and it kind of freaks you out.
Yeah, it's definitely a little unsettling, right? Like, what happens if the antibiotics just stop working?
Yeah, and it seems like something that would only happen way out in the future, but it's happening now and it's kind of scary.
For sure. But the good news is researchers are coming up with some pretty amazing solutions, some of them in the most unexpected places.
Which brings us to the topic of today's deep dive, which is all about a new type of antibiotic. And get this, it's inspired by, wait for it, barnacles.
And we're not talking about harvesting some miracle cure from the barnacles themselves. This is about taking inspiration
Yeah.
from their ingenious design and using it to create a whole new weapon against bacteria.
Right, so it's not about extracting something from the barnacles, it's about learning from them.
Exactly. See, barnacles have this incredible ability to cling onto surfaces, right? They've got this super strong grip. And scientists at Northeastern University were curious, what if we could use that same principle to target bacterial infections?
So essentially they're saying, let's fight slime with slime, because, I mean, that's what we're talking about here, right? Biofilms, those slimy layers that bacteria create to protect themselves.
You got it. They published their research in the Journal of the American Chemical Society, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. Basically, they've developed a special type of polymer, and this polymer works in a way we haven't really seen before.
Okay, so before we get into how it works, can you give us a quick refresher on biofilms and why they're such a challenge when it comes to treating infections?
Sure. So you've got to remember, bacteria aren't these solitary creatures. They're actually quite social. They love to band together in these communities, and these communities form a slimy protective layer, which we call a biofilm.
It's like their own little fortress, right? They're all huddled in there, totally safe and sound from any antibiotics we try to throw at them.
Exactly. And that's what makes them so hard to treat. They're like, nice try with the antibiotics, but we're holed up in here. You can't touch us.
So how on earth do we break through these biofilms? I mean, they sound pretty impenetrable.
Well, that's where things get really interesting. So instead of targeting individual bacteria like conventional antibiotics do, these barnacle-inspired polymers, they go after the biofilm itself.
So it's more about breaking down their defenses rather than like a direct attack.
Precisely. It's like this: imagine trying to clean a plate covered in greasy food with just water. You need something to break down that grease
Right,
first.
you need soap. So are these polymers like the soap in this scenario?
Exactly. They disrupt the glue that holds the entire bacterial community together.
Wow, so they basically break down the walls of their fortress and leave them vulnerable.
Exactly. And once that biofilm is disrupted, the bacteria are left exposed and vulnerable, making them easy targets for traditional antibiotics, or even our body's own immune system, which is already really good at fighting off invaders when it can actually, reach them.
Okay, so it's like we're finally learning to fight fire with fire or maybe slime with slime.
Something like that. And the really exciting part is that it seems to be working. In the lab, they've seen incredible results. This polymer was able to eliminate almost 99% of the biofilm.
99%. That's incredible. So this could be huge.
It could be. There's still a lot to learn, but the initial findings are definitely promising.
Okay, so what are the next steps? What are the researchers tackling now?
Well, one of the really exciting things is that the potential applications for this go way beyond just like, treating a cut or something.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, imagine this. You've got a chronic wound that just refuses to heal, and it's because of a biofilm.
Okay, I can see that being a problem.
It's a huge problem, especially for people with diabetes, right?
Yeah.
So doctors could potentially use a liquid form of this polymer to clear out the infection, and boom, the wound can finally heal.
That would be amazing. No more chronic wounds. That's got to be life-changing for a lot of people.
Exactly. And then there are medical devices.
Oh, right, like catheters and implants.
Yeah, those things are lifesavers for a lot of people, but they can be a breeding ground for, you guessed it, biofilms.
Because those surfaces are like the perfect place for bacteria to latch on and start building their little fortresses.
You said it. But what if we could coat those devices with this polymer?
So it would be like giving them a suit of armor, but like an invisible suit of armor.
Exactly. Preventing those biofilms from ever even forming.
So instead of trying to get rid of the bacteria after it's already taken hold, it's like we're stopping it before it even starts.
Exactly. We're talking about a whole new way of thinking about preventing infection.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
So we've got chronic wounds, medical devices. What else? What other applications are we talking about here?
Well, it's not just healthcare. This technology has the potential to be useful in any industry that has to worry about bacterial contamination.
Okay, so like food processing plants?
Yes. And water treatment facilities.
Yeah.
Any place where even the tiniest amount of bacteria can cause huge problems.
This is incredible. So this one discovery about barnacles could actually lead to innovations across all these different
It's
fields.
pretty amazing, right? But, and this is important, it's not a magic bullet. There are still some hurdles to overcome.
Okay, so what are the researchers working on now?
Well, one thing they've discovered is that how well this polymer works depends on the biofilm itself.
You mean some biofilms are tougher than others?
Yeah. So in the lab, this polymer worked amazingly well on biofilms that were made mostly of carbohydrates.
Okay.
But when they tested it on biofilms that were mostly made of protein, it wasn't as effective.
Interesting. So it's not like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Not yet. Right
Oh.
now, the researchers are trying to tweak the recipe a little bit, so to speak.
Tweaking the recipe, what do you mean?
So they're playing around with the properties of this polymer to see if they can make it more versatile, more adaptable.
So they're basically trying to make it work on all kinds of biofilms, not just the ones that are mostly carbohydrates.
You got it. And one of the key things they're looking at is something called viscosity.
Viscosity. Isn't that about how thick or thin something is?
You got it. How thick or runny the polymer is really matters. It's got to be just right to be able to really get in there and break down those protein-based biofilms.
Fascinating. So what happens once the biofilm is broken down? That's it. Bacteria's gone.
That's the million-dollar question, and it's exactly what researchers are trying to figure out. Remember, this is still a pretty new discovery. We're just scratching the surface here.
Okay, so we've learned a lot about what this polymer can do, but what about the bigger picture? I mean, what's the potential impact of all of this? So instead of always playing catch up, always reacting to these infections, we could actually get ahead of the game and prevent them.
That's the hope. I mean, imagine a world where surgeons could just apply this coating to implants as a matter of routine.
No more risk of infection. That would be incredible.
It would be huge. And think about all the other possibilities, like those ear infections that kids get all the time,
Oh my gosh. Those are the worst. I've been there.
right? So researchers are looking into things like eardrops, even coatings for contact lenses.
Wow. So many possibilities. And that's not even mentioning the whole issue of antibiotic resistance.
Exactly. If we can prevent these infections from happening in the first place, we're taking a lot of pressure off our current antibiotics.
Right, which is really important because those antibiotics are starting to fail and we need new solutions and fast.
We need to be smart about how we use the antibiotics we have, and this could be a huge part of that.
It's like we've been so focused on winning each individual battle against bacteria that we kind of forgot to think about the bigger picture. We forgot to think about how they work together, how they build these biofilms.
It's like you can try to fight each individual soldier, but if they've got a fortress, you're not going to get very far.
Right, you've got to break down that fortress.
Exactly. And that's what's so revolutionary about this whole barnacle-inspired approach.
Yeah.
We're learning from nature. We're finding new ways to tackle this problem.
It's pretty amazing to think that something as simple as a barnacle clinging to a rock could hold the key to this major breakthrough in medicine.
It just goes to show that inspiration can come from the most unexpected places.
As long as we keep asking the right questions and stay curious, well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling really hopeful after learning about all of this.
Me too. There's still a lot more research to be done, but this could be a real game changer.
It could be the start of a whole new era in how we prevent and treat infections. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of barnacle-inspired antibiotics.
It's been a good one.
It has. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time for another deep dive.